Hello there everyone, welcome to a guide and overview of Count Noctilus of the Vampire Coast. As always, I played through the initial turns and got a feel for the faction, its strengths and weaknesses. I will show you my conclusions and in the end give you the army compositions that I would try out for some variety in playstyle. As always, this is not an in-depth guide, but will certainly help you. Without further ado, let's play then and sail with Count Noctilus. For your short victory condition, you will be required to have at least 8,000 infantry and to occupy Loot Razor Sack 30 different settlements. It's a very straightforward one. It allows you quite the sandbox game, even earlier on, which is excellent. Now, the reward is plus 15% casualty replenishment rate. This is excellent as well to ensure your armies always recover quickly after a battle. Now, for your long victory condition, you need to achieve the short victory conditions to occupy Loot Razor Sack 75 different settlements, and at the start of your turn you need to have at least 25,000 infamy. Again, it's very straightforward. You can just go anywhere with this. You can even ignore the High Elves if you choose, if you would like a different option. So it's very good to make the replay value of this campaign excellent, really. So the reward is plus 35 Winds of Magic Power Reserve for all your armies, of course. Now, excellent to ensure that because the Vampire Coast certainly benefits from that, and yeah, you'll get a better bonus to continue domination. Now, Noctilus is the master of the Bloody River. He gains war declaration missions with unique rewards, more on that later. I'll show you an example, for instance. Diplomatic relations with followers of Nagash. This is also good to ensure that you have a possible ally in the early game. Then Pirate's crew recruitment capacity +2, so he can recruit units much faster than other lords, and the recruitment duration for Necrofex Colossus is -1 turn, with the minimum being of course 1 turn. Oh, it's a pretty straightforward one. Now, in terms of climates, there's plenty of them suitable, not a lot unpleasant. Unpleasant with the mountains, it's a little bit of an issue, but still, for the most part, this is what you'll find. Overall, it's a good faction. It's a good faction to conquer the whole map. I'll explain why. Because of the replenishment rate. Because they have so much replenishment that you can counter some of these replenishment issues. So yeah, that's basically it. That's what I take into account while recommending these. Now, your starting location is just one settlement, the Galleon's Graveyard. It's a very defensible position, probably one of the most defensible in the game. It gives you a solid base to ensure you can attack anywhere you wish, of course, and enemies trying to conquer you will suffer attrition in reefs, so it's cool. In addition, of course, you do have great access to the sea and any goodies you may find there, so this is a great faction to take over those benefits very soon, very easily. You can immediately go with Count Noctilus to those if you wish. Now, enemies will be varied, but you start initially versus the High Elves, located in the island, of course, versus Tiranoc and the Calador here. Now, typical expansion may go everywhere, because they have, wide sandbox goals, but dominating Ulthuan appears to be a good idea, then anywhere you'd like. That's basically the idea here. Diplomatically, you're kind of between the evil and neutral zone, so you do have some nice bonuses, for instance, with Slaanesh here. They do have historical relations with the Duces of Slaanesh, so that may be a good deal. And you will also have good deals, of course, with the Dark Elves, because you're at war with most of the High Elves. So enemies will be High Elves, and most likely anything from the Order Tide following that, so Empire, etc. It's still not easy to pinpoint who your foes and allies will be, given how vastly different the campaigns can be with Count Noctilus. Now, outpost potentials, of course, with the Dark Elves and Slaanesh, should give you some fast units, either the infantry or the cavalry or the single entities. So yeah, these are the ones that I would try to incorporate in my armies if possible. Of course, assuming that Slaanesh survives, always a good idea is, for instance, to gift a settlement, and give them one good settlement for them to defend, and who knows where they will be. It's always a nice idea to have a different campaign. So in terms of mechanics, the vampire coasts are really nice, as they have a lot of small but important mechanics. Now, Noctilus, as you see here, that I copy-pasted here, they have a unique set of events that gives you bonuses in case you are at war with a specific faction. It's a mission, basically. It all comes out to whether you choose to comply or not with it, but for instance, it would have reinforced hordes, some more physical resistance for your units, and some treasury. So it's always giving you some form, some direction, but you can always choose whether or not to go for it, which is excellent, you know. That's exactly what we want, especially in more of a sandbox idea of a campaign. Now, Raise the Dead is pretty much as the Vampire counts, although not as effective. It does allow quick armies to be summoned. I managed to get all of these units basically between recruitment and summoning of these of the Raise the Dead, which is particularly really useful in the early game. Now, you also have treasure maps and pieces of 8. First, treasure maps. These are just some riddles, basically, which will pinpoint a location. It has some riddle to tell you exactly where it is, but of course, the map marker does tell you where it is. But previously it didn't. It told you, you know, somewhere around that area. But all you need to do is move a lord or a hero here, and then use an ability. It's a stance that they have so that they can dig in, and you'll get some treasure. It's always excellent to have one hero roaming around the world, trying just to get all these treasures, and in the meantime they'll meet new factions, so they'll act like diplomats, basically, in a sense that you'll meet new factions and try to negotiate with them as well. Pieces of weight, of weight. It's how you acquire your regiments of renown. Basically, you'll need to fight off some pirate factions, really, and that's how you'll unlock those regiments of renown. That's pretty much it. Okay, so for instance, you can get some rotting Prometheans by destroying this one. You can get some zombie pirate gathering mobs with handguns here. You can get some deck droppers here. I believe there is deck gunners here, which is really cool because they're a really awesome looking unit. They are ethereal, if not mistaken. So yeah, that's how you acquire your regiments of renown. A nice mechanic there. Now, the most basic is the currency. A currency that you have, which is infamy. Well, not really a currency, actually. It just keeps growing, in essence. It gives you some fights overall, as whenever you reach a specific level, you'll need to fight for a sea shanty. So as soon as you reach 8,000 level, you'll need to fight for this faction. It will show up to battle you, and you'll need to fight for the sea shanty verse. What is this? These are army abilities, in essence. They will grow, you know, they'll be basically upgrade into the other. And you can see how reload skill plus 40, that's excellent, but melee defense plus 40 to all allies in range? That's crazy. It's literally to your whole army. Melee defense plus 40. Done. No one hits you. No one can manage to. It's crazy good, and it goes into the strength of this army as well. Now, so port settlements allow you the building of pirate coves. Unlike the Skaven undercities, pirate coves cannot be discovered, and are only destroyed if the settlement is razed. This adds to their usefulness. Now the buildings include something like infamy gained per turn, Lord recruit rank faction 1, and hero capacity for your heroes. You also have an infamy gained per turn and vampiric corruption in adjacent provinces in that one. You also have some more income. So infamy and income gained from the local settlement's income. This is one of the key ones. It would, for instance, if you go on a settlement like Lothern or like Nagaron, which are typically very good settlements that have like 3,000, 4,000 profit in no time income, you'll gain 2,000. Can you imagine that just for one settlement? So it's really cool, really profitable, especially the ones that you'll conquer way down the line. Or you can have a basic one, which has infamy, some basic income, some straightforward income, not based on settlements, okay? Research rate and income from trade tariffs. The research rate one is really cool as well, especially if you don't count that that place will be, you know, any good anytime soon with more income. Basically, if 200 is already acceptable considering the gains here, then by all means go for this one. You'll also get the research rate there. Now, Some lords, including your Legendary Lord, have a shipbuilding panel. So basically it's like a horde style construction. This is similar to Black Arcs. It allows you to quickly build infrastructure to recruit units, as well as receiving some important buffs. Now, it is easier and quicker to develop these over your basic settlements, really. It also has reduced upkeep, as you can see there. Now, a key point is how these sort of ship structure ones, they do provide campaign movement range, as you see there. They do provide some reduced upkeep and vampire corruption, casualty replenishment rate, and pirate crew recruitment capacity +6. Can you imagine? Noctilus already has 2, you can get 10. So 2 of bases, 2 from Noctilus, and then 6 more here, you can get 10. And I assume there's further bonuses down the line. And also some pirate crew growth, of course, and unit experience per turn. That's great. You have some a special deck here for casualty replenishment rate, armor, melee defense for the Lord's army. So it's really cool for the Count Noctilus as well. This counts kind of like a buff. Okay, so all his army will always be more powerful. And a special deck here just for basically some infamy gains, some army abilities, etc., as you can read there. So all in all, it's a great way to develop these ones instead of your basic settlements. Nothing wrong with you developing both, of course, but for the early game, you may just as well develop this one. Now, in terms of rights, let's talk rights. You have the Curse of the Sea Mist. Basically, all your regions will cause attrition to any foreign armies, and you're immune to it, of course. It also provides a vanguard deployment for several units. This is great as a defensive tool, especially useful early to mid-game where someone may be coming in to attack and you're not prepared. Pop this one up and certainly you'll have some advantages. You also have the Curse of Eternal Service. This one pretty much you'll be trying every time. Control all provinces is always good. Loyalty control, because you do have the loyalty mechanic in your armies. Just make sure that your lords don't reach 0 loyalty, otherwise they'll revolt. They'll take their army with them, so be careful. You also have the Curse of the Queen's Cannon to recruit the Queen Bess. Note, only 1 can be recruited, but it's massive. Basically, you can do an army just entirely around Queen Bess. And it also gives you casualty replenishment rate to all armies. Finally, Curse of the Bountiful Treasure costs nothing. It's just on cooldown, and it gives you 500 treasury for every building owned from the buried treasure chain. Let me show you what that chain is. That's basically it's not this one. Hold on. Yeah, that's basically this one. So 500 for each of the basic income that you have, which is excellent. You know, at certain points it will imply a lot of money, and you can always just pop that one up for free every 15 turns. So great. Now, finally, you see how many they have? Finally, we do have offices. So offices like other similar ones, for instance, your Admiral of the Fleet, you gain more income from sacking settlements, but you can assign any lord to Fleet Secretary for less upkeep faction-wide, more loyalty. You can also assign here for, more campaign line of sight, more campaign movement range. Several ones of these, I'm not going to cover all of them, but several of these have some specific buffs for your units, such as, for instance, if a lord is the Fleet Beastmaster, he'll have more weapon strength for deck droppers, terrorgeists, and scurvy dogs. Why not build an army with him with some deck droppers and terrorgeists? It will have that buff. They'll be better. So that's the sort of idea that you can use here. Not only to get faction-wide buffs, but also for your specific lord that is there to have a little bit of an edge in some specific army composition if you choose. So yeah, that's a lot of mechanics actually for the Vampire Coast. One of the things that I really loved about them, because there's always something happening in the game, you know. In terms of your province edicts, there's some atypical effects. So you have loyalty not declining for armies in province. This is good to ensure that, you know, if you have close to become a disloyal general, you can just pop him into a province, give him this, use this province edict, and suddenly You can control that lord. You can basically try to prepare to gain more loyalty for him, etc. So, use situationally, basically. Do note that you lose infamy per turn while you're at it. Now, you can also get attrition, -7% when under siege, global recruitment capacity, and more ammunition. This is more like a defensive one in case you need, if someone is really attacking you, don't overlook, these edicts, as long as you can have that, pop that one up, and at least you'll have some benefits for your defensive capabilities. Now, you also have this one. Also defensive, campaign movement range for enemy armies who start to turn on the region. Also useful, to ensure that the enemy cannot, has less room for maneuverability. And a basic one that should be on most of the time, for the most part, you will have this one, which is the growth, recruitment cost, and local recruitment capacity. Nothing that actually provides, for instance, some income or something like that, which is a shame. They would be welcoming that, but still nothing wrong with having just some lesser recruitment costs and growth over there. As for the army stances, basically you do have the dig for treasure. It consumes all remaining movement range, and this is where you use in combination with the treasure hunts, basically the treasure maps. So if you were in that location, you would dig, and suddenly you'll gain the treasure. Pretty easy. You also have encamp, which does not cost movement points. This should be done at every opportunity to replenish. It's also one of the reasons why it's so good to conquer the whole map with the Vampire Coast, because they can always, finish off their turn in encamp position. In addition, you also have raiding that, same thing as typical, costs 50% move, you gain some income, immune to attrition, ambush for the typical 25%, and forced march. Nothing to see there. In terms of buildings, the Galleon's Graveyard has the Wreck of the Helden Hammer. It's great to get better artillery, some nice buffs for artillery as well, and it grants the recruitment of Necrofex Colossus. So it's basically a replacement of the Great Altar of the Necrax, which is pretty cool. Now, militarily, you require 6 buildings, but the biggest issue is that all of them must be built in the capital, as you can see. There's no building that ends in tier 3, of course. You do have decent tier 3 units, including most of your good shooting units. You do have carronades and mortars, which are excellent in the beginning. You have most of your monstrous infantry, including rotting Prometheans there. So there's some options definitely in terms of tier 3. The tier 4 is actually where they shine, including starting with some Depth Guard, some Rotting Prometheus Gunnery Bob, which is a defender and fire unit. It's crazy good. And some of your deck droppers, these are good, situational, and the deck gunners, of course, one of the best units in the roster. Really cool. So, of course, the single entities above and the Depth Guard with pole arms. But yeah, in terms of roster, they're really cool. It's just difficult to build those up in any armies, in any settlements. In terms of your infrastructure, you do have growth and control and some debuffs for your enemies. You have a small amount of income and control building. You have a Vampiric Corruption building, a lot of Vampiric Corruption. Pretty much you don't need this too much, maybe one every province will do. And of course, most of what you want is money. So the income building. Also remember the right that can increase this every 15 turns, which is really great. You have to take that into account whenever you're building this one, because of course it will give you a lot of treasure from that right, of course. Now, research. In terms of research, they have one of the better ones, I would say. So they can increase, for the most part, lots of campaign stuff and army. They do buff a lot their own units, I would say, especially their missile units, which is the bread and butter for the faction. And then you still have some banners, basically some heralds that you can use, which is great. You can have those in your army and take advantage of that, and some of these legendary admirals. So basically they all have ship building, so at least in any campaign you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, starting with your lord as well, 5 shipbuilding locations. So that's great. It's great just to ensure that you always are kind of nearby one of these to be able to recruit some units and to build up those buildings over there. It's really cool, really cool. Now, speaking of which, let me just comment one thing. Both in the buildings of course over here, and both in the ship building. Let me show you with the ship building as well. You do have one great characteristic, which is just this one has hero recruitment, has units that are good anti-mobs, like the bombers. You have good anti-armor piercing, of course. You have good anti-large units, and then you have a defender. So just one building can give you lots of variety, which is great to ensure that you have an optimized build right from the start in the beginning, and you can use the building slots for other stuff, which is why I'm doing this. So of course nothing's stopping you from going immediately for cannons and the army abilities there, but it's up to you. The good thing is that there's options. That's the idea. As always, we have our Legendary Lord or Lord specifics, the yellow line, the caster line, if your Lord in this case it has a good combination of Shadow and the Lore of Vampires, which is excellent. You also have the red line, an army, or the skill line. You also have the blue line, or a campaign. Now, starting with Count Noctilus, he actually shines in terms of recruitment, in terms of his own army as well. He gives them plenty of buffs to grow, to raid or sack. Like you see here, he gets regeneration. He can get some more bonuses for Depth Guard, Terrorgeist, and Deck Droppers, as you see there. Also a little bit more leadership, which the Vampire Coast does lack. So all in all, a very good set of buffs over there. In terms of the blue line, it does have an interesting aspect. You do have the replenishment on the very first line, which is excellent. Okay, and there's another one that is so important. The upkeep has not been reduced, which for other armies, every single other faction in the game, they have this one with 9%. However, this still has the 15% from Warhammer 2. And then you still have the Black Flag for minus upkeep, minus 8%. Considering that you also have the ship building abilities to reduce the upkeep, you can get these armies really cheap, especially the ones with with your Legendary Lord. Now, red line can be extremely effective or not. It is a very good one to come up with different possibilities for your armies. By all means, if that is something that you like to do. Of course, nothing wrong with you focusing him on becoming a very powerful fighter and just, ignoring a little bit the army. It's up to you guys. Just have fun. In terms of gunnery rights, I like to mention they are quite infallible because of this skill here. They can affect the accuracy and reload skill of all allies in range. Typically what I will do with the gunnery rights is pop them into the middle of the artillery so they can, have this buff immediately when the battle starts, and that's immediately excellent for you guys to have, artillery that actually hits the spot right off the gate. It's really cool, and I really love this. In addition to that, he can also replenish ammunition, and this goes to the army's abilities, which is, you'll notice that every single unit has more damage basically when they are above 80% ammunition. So if you can keep that ammunition high, they'll do more damage. That's why it's so much more important with gunnery rights than with any other faction that has that ability to increase ammunition with the Vampire Coast. So here are the red line skills for the Vampire Coast. Note how both low tier infantry and higher tier are on the same, and how nearly every ranged unit, including a frontline defender with a Rotting Promethean's gunnery mob, is there. So this allows some good flexibility, They judge some of the cheapest combinations, which is excellent, because all lords have casting abilities, so you should have some choices for those skills. Now, Noctilus is infamous for being the dude to get a ton of Necrophax Colossus. In fact, he is the one that you can just ignore this and go Necrophax Colossus dumbstack if you want. I dislike that. I just like to have different army compositions, play with everything else, but nothing wrong with you guys doing it. Now, you can also try these compositions taking advantage of the small buffs that he gives for Depth Guard, for deck droppers, and for Terror Guys, and just go with sort of this composition, or more a flying composition as you wish, if more artillery based, more missile based, or just a standard composition relying on those Colossus to dish out a lot of damage, and also with these as defenders, and still with the Terror Guys for any flyers. Note how all of these cost 15 skill points in the red line. Note that this value includes the 3, the initial ones that you need to start the red line buffs, and also the very last one. So 15, pretty cool, so that you don't have to spend way too much. Now, there's other options, of course, for your basic armies. A front line of monsters with just some generalized missile troops. Note how varied the missile troops can be, compared with the other factions, because they are all on the same one. So you can get, some anti-large, some long range, or some mid-range, some long range. You see that sort of idea, and some defenders, all in the same. This is a different army, focusing more on the Sirens, more of a fast army, actually. And most of these can actually get Vanguard, so it's really cool. And finally, this is the bread and butter that I would use. These guys as defenders, pop them in the front, get the Lord and also the Morgan Hunter there. So that's already 6 in the front, and then everything else defending. These guys also in the front. So yeah, this sort of idea will generally give you a great result. Nothing wrong, of course, with trying a monster-only faction combination with just some flyers. Notice how cheap that is. This is a great sweeper army just to go in and easily kill any easier army from the enemy. No, don't put these guys against the stack of chosen. That's the idea. That's what I call a sweeper army. But against pretty much anything else, they'll do fine. And this is finally a everyone shoots up, everyone shoots combination, just to have some fun, and see how many of the enemy actually reach out to you, So yeah. That's typically. As always, the hero selection is based on just some variety, but nothing too important. I typically like to have at least one melee hero and one caster to help out the other lord, but you can have more or less whatever. You just ensure that you have a plan for it. That's my idea. So, as a final analysis, it's a different take from Luther's campaign that is located around here. And a great one to actually have a pure sandbox game, honestly. You can become a pirate, just pillage everything, establish pirate coves everywhere, even before you start conquering. So really, you have a lot of flexibility, and you can definitely just explore the whole map and get treasure. Go over there, just capture all the treasure, establish vampire coves, and once you've done it, then you can start building up and conquering everything. Now, their army is crazy good after all the buffs that you can get, especially in terms of technology. Everything just gets so increased that it's excellent. You make a formidable force on the battlefield versus 1 versus 2 armies. It's pretty easy. You do rely on range, so if you're moving while you're already in range, please stop and fire. Always remember that. Now, your army consists of good infantry, great missiles and artillery, good monstrous infantry, decent flyers, good single entities, they lack cavalry, and they're somewhat slow overall. Replenishment is great, especially when under good climate. Now be wary of the chaos locations too. I believe now it is time to sail the 3 seas with Count Noctilus.